when a frantic phone call reaches the Seoul police station. A terrified scientist named Dr. Young Chul warns officers that a massive bioweapon attack is about to strike the Dongwoo building. According to his desperate claims, a mutated slime mold virus will soon turn every person inside into a mindless monster. Before the police can track his location, Young Chul injects a strange liquid directly into his own arm. Although the officer on the phone thinks the man is insane, Young Chul insists that the only vaccine to the bioweapon is now stored inside his own blood. Meanwhile, inside the high-tech Dongwoo building, hundreds of high-profile guests gather for a major corporate conference. A powerful biotechnology company called Chains Bio holds a presentation, while its ambitious CEO, Kang Woo-chul, steps onto the main stage. As the crowd watches in awe, CEO Kang showcases how a modified fungal slime mold can rapidly regenerate damaged human tissue. Sitting near the back of the auditorium, an unemployed former professor named Se-jong listens closely to the lecture. She arrived at the event hoping to secure a job recommendation from her ex-husband, Han Gyu-sung, who is currently preparing to move overseas. While the presentation continues inside the main auditorium, security guard Hyun-suk patrols the busy shopping mall on the lower floor. He keeps a watchful eye on his younger sister, Hyun-hee, who relies on a wheelchair due to a severe mobility disability. In a nearby corridor, a quiet high school student named Son tries to avoid a group of aggressive bullies. Although the crowded mall seems completely peaceful, a quiet nightmare is about to unfold. Once the corporate presentation ends, CEO Kang walks into his private VIP room on the third floor to celebrate his success. Suddenly, Dr. Young Chul steps out from the shadows, blocking the doors behind him. Burning with years of secret resentment, Young Chul accuses the CEO of stealing his life's work and claiming all the credit. Before Kang can call his security team, Young Chul jabs a syringe filled with mutated slime mold directly into the CEO's neck. Within seconds of the injection, CEO Kang collapses onto the ground in severe agony. As dark veins spread across his face and his eyes turn completely white, his entire body undergoes a terrifying biological transformation. When he stands back up, he is no longer human. Driven by an unnatural predatory instinct, the mutated So lunges at his nearby assistants, tearing into their flesh with feral rage. As screaming employees sprint into the main hallway, the terrifying infection spreads from person to person within seconds. Hearing the frantic emergency calls over his radio, counterterrorism team leader Lee Bong-suk arrives at the building with his tactical squad. Before his officers can secure the main lobby, the building's automated defense system triggers a complete emergency lockdown. Massive steel shutters slam down over every glass door, trapping hundreds of terrified civilians inside a living nightmare. When the heavy shutters lock the exits, Se-jong and her ex-husband Gyu-sung find themselves trapped in a shopping mall along with Officer Lee. Security guard Hyun-suk holds his sister tight, while the frightened student Son cowers nearby with a delinquent female student. As terrifying shrieks echo through the corridors, a wave of mutated monsters bursts out from the elevator banks. While the survivors sprint down a long commercial corridor, the delinquent female student stumbles and falls onto the slick floor. Seeing the girl in immediate danger, Gyu-sung turns around without a second thought to pull her back up. Although he successfully shoves the girl into an open doorway, a snarling creature jumps toward him and bites deep into his neck. Devastated by the tragic sight, Se-jong can only scream in horror as her former husband dies to save a stranger. After retreating inside a dark clothing store, the surviving group barricades the front glass doors with heavy metal racks. Looking closely at the creatures through the glass, Se-jong notices strange glowing fungal threads running across their pale skin. Whenever one monster spots a survivor, every other creature nearby turns toward the exact same spot instantly. She realizes that the monsters are connected through a mycelium network, allowing them to share sensory data in real time. Because every failed attack teaches the swarm new lessons, the creatures evolve and adapt within minutes. While the survivors process this horrifying realization, Officer Lee receives a crucial radio message from his outside headquarters. The officers inform him that Dr. Young Chul caused the outbreak, but he carries the only known vaccine inside his bloodstream. According to security cameras, Young Chul is still hiding inside the VIP room on the third floor. Realizing that securing the scientist is their only chance for survival, the group prepares to make a dangerous trek through the building. To slip past the evolving horde without drawing attention, Se-jong formulates a brilliant tactical plan. She notices that the creatures rely heavily on human body odor to track their prey, so the survivors douse their clothes in harsh chemical antifreeze to mask their natural scent. To draw the monsters away from the main stairway, Sejong and the others spray heavy designer perfume all over a mannequin in this shop. When the creatures smell the fragrant perfume, they mistake the mannequin for a living person and swarm into the shop. While the monsters are completely distracted by the mannequin, the survivors quietly slip past the horde and see the elevator ahead. However, someone falls because the infected creatures block the path. Remembering that fungal organisms are highly sensitive to sudden moisture, Sejong holds her lighter underneath an overhead smoke detector. When the automated sprinklers activate, cold water rains down across the entire hallway. As the water saturates the glowing fungal threads, the sensory network short circuits, temporarily paralyzing the entire horde. Taking advantage of the brief window, the survivors rush into the VIP room and surround Dr. Young-chul. Officer Lee immediately slaps heavy steel handcuffs onto the scientist's wrists, while the group forces him toward a large cargo elevator. They plan to carry him up to the 30th floor, where a military helicopter can evacuate them from the rooftop helipad. While riding inside the spacious cargo lift, Sejong notices that Young-chul's eyes are moving rapidly in a strange pattern. Although he remains completely silent, his pupils dilate as if he is watching multiple screens inside his own head. Suddenly, the lift comes to a jarring stop on the 9th floor instead of the rooftop. As the doors slide open, a horde of waiting monsters surges forward into the tight elevator shaft. During the bloody scramble to keep the monsters out, several survivors are pulled into the darkness and torn to pieces. Taking advantage of the extreme chaos, Young-chul slips out of his restraints and steps calmly out into the hallway. Shockingly, the snarling monsters completely ignore him, walking right past his body as if he does not exist. Watching him walk away unharmed, Sejong realizes the horrifying truth, understanding that Young-chul can see directly through the eyes of every infected creature. Meanwhile, outside the locked perimeter, Gyu-sung's current wife, Gong Seo-hee, desperately seeks news about her husband. Driven by grief and suspicion, she joins an armed military research unit tasked with searching Young-chul's off-site laboratory. When the heavily armed team steps inside the dark facility, they discover rows of reinforced glass chambers containing infected experimental monkeys. While a soldier steps closer to examine a cracked enclosure, a giant mutated monkey labeled Subject 1 leaps out from the darkness. The aggressive beast attacks the squad with terrifying speed, triggering a chaotic firefight inside the narrow laboratory. During the desperate scramble, a soldier fires a burst of rifle rounds, shattering Subject 1's head and killing the beast instantly. The moment Subject 1 dies, an incredible reaction occurs throughout the entire facility. Every single infected monkey freezes in place, standing completely motionless like gray stone statues. Examining the laboratory charts on the wall, Seo-hee notices that Subject 1 served as the central biological hub for the entire experimental group. She realizes that if the primary host of a fungal network is eliminated, the entire hive mind loses its ability to function. Back inside the Dongwoo building, the remaining survivors retreat deep into the underground basement to hide from the roaming horde. They enter the master control room, where security guard Hyun-suk locks the heavy blast doors. Because her mobility limitations make running impossible, Hyun-hee voluntarily stays inside the control room to monitor the facility's CCTV security feeds. Using a group text chat on their mobile phones, she promises to guide the survivors through safe routes toward the maintenance exits. While monitoring the security screens, Hyun-hee spots Dr. Young-chul walking calmly into a lower storage room. The mad scientist approaches the mutated body of CEO Kong. In a shocking act of deliberate insanity, Young-chul sticks his arm directly into Kang's jaws and allows the mutated CEO to bite him. As the concentrated slime mold floods his bloodstream, Young-chul screams in agony before bursting into manic laughter. Through this extreme biological sacrifice, he merges his consciousness directly with the core bioweapon, granting him total command over every infected soul in the building. Across all 30 floors of the facility, every monster suddenly freezes in place, waiting for their new master's direct telepathic orders. Inside the underground control room, Officer Lee grows increasingly ruthless as the danger rises. Fearing that carrying a disabled person will slow the group down, he insists on abandoning Hyun-hee to save their own lives. When Hyun-suk passionately defends his sister, a violent argument breaks out between the two men. During the intense physical struggle, Officer Lee loudly refuses to protect a helpless girl in a wheelchair, which is still in the control room. Dr. Young-chul hears their argument and instantly pinpoints the exact location of the security hub. With a single mental command, Young Chul directs hundreds of sprinting monsters straight toward the basement control room. Watching the camera feeds fill with incoming beasts, Hyun-hee realizes that rescue is completely impossible. To save her brother's life, she intentionally sends false navigation directions to his mobile phone, directing his group away from the incoming horde. Moments later, the heavy glass doors shatter, and the wave of monsters swarms over her desk. When Hyun-suk receives a final automated message from his sister's phone, he realizes she sacrificed her life to protect him. Overwhelmed by unbearable grief and madness, his mind snaps completely. He blames Officer Lee and the other survivors for her horrific death, swearing to murder every person left alive inside the building. Snatching a kitchen knife, he begins broadcasting their real-time locations over the facility loudspeakers to help the monsters find them. As the surviving group fractures under the extreme pressure, total moral collapse takes over, trying to create a live distraction for himself. Officer Lee shoots an innocent civilian in the leg and leaves him bleeding in the middle of the corridor. However, his cold betrayal fails immediately as the frenzied monsters ignore the wounded man and drag the officer into the shadows. Nearby in a clothing store, the delinquent female student turns violently on the young So-eun. Fearing that So-eun's soft crying will attract the horde, the delinquent girl brutally shoves her out into an oncoming wave of monsters. But as the infected teeth sink into So-eun's shoulder, the dying girl grabs her attacker's collar, dragging the traitorous student down into the feeding frenzy beside her. Meanwhile, the vengeful Hyun-suk stalks through the third-floor corridor with his bloody knife. When he finally corners Dr. Young Chul, he raises the blade to kill the scientist. But before the knife can fall, Young Chul steps aside with a cold, mocking smile. Out of the dark corridor walks the freshly mutated body of Hyun-hee, standing upright on two legs for the very first time. Seeing his beloved sister transformed into a terrifying monster, Hyun-suk drops his knife as his spirit completely shatters. He falls to his knees in tears, refusing to defend himself against his own blood. Stepping forward with blank eyes, the infected Hyun-hee snatches a fallen hunting knife and drives it straight into her brother's chest, killing him instantly. Standing over the bleeding bodies, Young Chul turns his attention to Se-jong. He reveals the dark truth behind why he chose this specific building for his grand attack. Years ago, Se-jong blew the whistle on Dr. Young Chul's father for corporate embezzlement, which led to his father's public disgrace and commit the unthinkable. Dr. Young Chul created this bioweapon as an ultimate form of revenge, believing that connecting all human minds into a single hive mind would eliminate lies and betrayal forever. At that exact moment, an elite military SWAT team breaches the building, and they take Dr. Young Chul into custody at gunpoint. However, during the escort process, other armed troops who had become zombies come towards them and fire at the troops holding Dr. Young Chul, turning them into Dr. Young Chul's personal army of zombie soldiers. Armed with military assault rifles and combat training, the infected SWAT squad follows Dr. Young Chul's commands without question. Dr. Young Chul marches out of the long building with his tactical horde, and he unleashes the bioweapon directly into the crowded streets of downtown Seoul. Panicked citizens run for their lives, but the armed infected soldiers open fire and spread the infection across the city center. The outbreak transforms into an unstoppable disaster, and the entire metropolis falls into complete chaos. Inside the empty building, Se-jong refuses to give up, and she remembers how Hyun-suk accidentally avoided detection earlier. When Hyun-suk was covered in zombie blood and fungal mycelium, the infected completely ignored his presence. She slices off a blood-soaked, mycelium-covered jacket from a corpse, and she wraps it around herself before stepping out into the street. The monsters march past her without noticing her presence, proving that the fungal scent completely masks her living human body. Meanwhile, Seol-hee tracks Dr. Young Chul's position using the city's traffic surveillance network, as she relays his real-time coordinates to Se-jong over the phone. Se-jong spots a parked car nearby, and she jumps inside the driver's seat to begin her final pursuit. She drives at breakneck speeds toward the city plaza, where Dr. Young Chul stands surrounded by thousands of infected citizens. Se-jong slams her foot on the accelerator, aiming the car directly at Dr. Young Chul to crush him once and for all. At the very last second, Dr. Young Chul leaps out of the way, and he sends a psychic signal ordering the swarm to destroy the vehicle. Se-jong leaps out of the car before the zombies can devour her, relying on her mycelium jacket to stay hidden among the crowd. Realizing her trick, Dr. Young Chul sends out another mental signal, instructing the horde to target anyone wearing the fungal jacket. Thinking fast, Se-jong tears off the jacket, and she throws it over the head of a nearby infected monster. The surrounding horde receives conflicting signals, and hundreds of infected creatures begin chasing the monster wearing the jacket. They lock into a terrifying feedback loop, running in endless circles around each other like a massive ant mill death spiral. The sudden influx of overwhelming sensory data completely overloads the Hive mind network, causing the entire swarm's collective system to crash. The monster's advanced intelligence instantly resets back to a primitive state, leaving them completely confused and disoriented. Sejong slides under a nearby city bus to hide, while the out-of-control horde shifts its attention to a massive human picture advertised on the bus wall. The mindless crowd pushes forward in a violent surge, shoving Dr. Young-chul directly into a wrecked, burning vehicle. Flames engulf Dr. Young-chul's body, and he screams in unbearable agony as his skin burns away. Because he is the central host of the Hive mind, every single infected person across the entire city instantly feels his pain, and thousands of monsters begin screaming in unison. Even while burning alive, the relentless mad scientist crawls out of the fire, dragging his charred body directly towards Sejong. Sejong refuses to back down, as she grabs a heavy steel bar lying on the pavement. As Dr. Young-chul lunges forward with his burning hands, she swings the bar with all her strength, smashing his skull with a brutal blow. Dr. Young-chul collapses onto the cold ground, and his lifeless eyes stare blankly into the sky as he breathes his final breath. The exact instant Dr. Young-chul dies, the biological signal snaps, and every single monster across the entire city of Seoul instantly freezes in place. The horrific chaos stops dead in its tracks, and total silence falls over the ruined streets. Sejong pulls herself out from under the bus, staring at the motionless statues surrounding her in complete awe. She calls Seol-hee on her phone, and Seol-hee confirms through the military CCTV feed that every infected creature has completely shut down. The nightmare is finally over, and Sejong catches her breath for the first time in hours. Colony 2026 movie recap ends with Sejong discussing how they will explain this biological disaster to the public. And finally, she slowly turns around and begins walking away down the quiet, empty street. However, just as the screen begins to fade, the camera zooms in closely on a frozen monster standing near the bus. Without warning, its biological eye twitches violently, and its sharp fingers slowly begin to flex. The nightmare is far from over.